Hello, Culture Matters podcast. Boy, am I excited for today. Before I introduce you to our guest, here's a quote just for this episode. There is no evil in sorcery, only in the hearts of men. My request is that you remember this. Merlin, our guest today, is a prophet in their own right, a connector of the dots, an advisor to the kings and queens and stewards of power in business. They are a United States veteran, so I want to thank them for that. They have a long track record in successfully bringing organizations in the fleet management services and others. One in particular from about 15 million to over 300 million in sales in less than 7 years. I've had the pleasure of working alongside them in various settings and getting to know them and where they see the future of their industry going. And I freaking love the name of the organization because I got in all sorts of Wikipedia rabbit holes trying to learn more about the metaphor of Merlin, the advisor. So if you listen to this and you yourself are a coach, a mentor, a role model, advisor, pay close attention. Rick Bell is here, founder of Merlin Group. Thanks for doing this, my friend.
Well, hey Jay, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. A couple of this is always fun. So, but a couple of things. It's not so much the advisor to kings and queens yet, right? It's those who want to be kings and queens, right? It's those up and coming companies that they haven't kind of taken their own journey,
Wow.
and we can help them on their way. You don't know what you don't know, and what I've said more often than not lately is that our experiences are hard fought and oftentimes have ended in failure, believe it or not. But in failure is tremendous wisdom, and there's a lot of value in sharing that wisdom, kind of pointing out pitfalls, what's around the corner for any organization, whether it be fleet management or pavement or IT. At the end of the day, at least for right now, till AI takes over, it really takes people to make it all work.
I was studying a bit on the story of Merlin and King Arthur. So can you unpack like a little bit? Merlin took King Arthur under his wing and kind of guided him, this who would eventually be king. So is that you're looking at that as a business context, like small business becoming big business? Is that the value of the metaphor in one way?
Well, yeah, it really is, and there's other parts of that too. So really, Merlin was an advisor to King Arthur's biological father, Uther, and this is all legend and what have you. It's based on, I think, Alfred the Great, and essentially, Merlin helped the young Arthur become the man he would become. But that journey, we think of Camelot, the Round Table, the Romanticism with the Kennedy administration. So it's part of pop culture in America. But that journey had its ups and downs, and it had a period of great difficulty. And that's kind of the metaphor that it's not always going to be sunny skies and clear sailing. There's going to be challenges. Merlin itself is more of an advisor. He oftentimes is warning and asking and pushing and cajoling his well, in this case Arthur, in the right direction, but also free will is part of that. And then sometimes when things are really bleak, Merlin kind of can reach into his bag of tricks and actually pull out some magic and maybe turn the tide of the situation. So the Merlin Group here, we kind of play on that a little bit because we see ourselves more advisors. We also join the fight. So Merlin picked a side. He picked a side. He picked the side of Arthur, and so we will pick sides. We'll join the fight. We'll help organizations, go to their destination, achieve those goals. And sometimes, we'll pull out of our bag of tricks, some magic at that critical moment. So there's a lot of metaphors there.
Why is it important to pick sides?
Well, I want to be clear about that. This is kind of in the sense of business and planting your flag for a cause and a course of action, and not really in terms of anything larger than that right now. It's always important to decide. The song, even when you don't choose, you choose, right? Inaction is action and has an effect. So when we have our clients, we advise, but we'll actually engage, join their ranks. We call that embedded engagement, and really drive those goals and become part of that culture for the time that we're part of that team. And that's picking sides.
When you how much of your tenure as a leader, amongst your men when you were it was at Baghdad?
Yeah, I had multiple deployments. It was based in central Iraq. The first deployment was just west of Baghdad in the Abu Ghraib district, bumping up against the Fallujah area, and then the second deployment was largely based right in Baghdad and up to Baghdad, up to an area called Taji.
How much of the leadership that you've brought into the your business endeavors was sharpened or cut, and sculpted in those times of war?
I don't know that it's measurable. I think your experiences really start to shape who you are, and then your actions and your thought processes and the way you interact with people and your subordinates and your peers and your superiors alike. You organically leverage that journey you've walked. In my case, let's say with the time in Iraq and the military, but even before that, everything we do is, and this is nothing new. We've heard this from folk songs and history, and everything we do from an early age until wherever we are at this point has been part of the DNA that we've created, and it affects every decision we make and how we interact with people.
What do you see are some natural blind spots that small business develops that our listeners may resonate with, having
Yeah,
not.
yeah. I'll say one thing is that if this is going to sound maybe, the small businesses don't know what they don't know, and when they're building, I think sometimes their small businesses are awestruck by their early successes, the numbers that when you're endeavoring in something and it starts working, and like, this is amazing, but you don't really know what you don't know. And there's some real fatal or really challenging mistakes people can make in terms of organizational structure. I think also businesses early on may trust a little bit too much in terms of the out of the book type of management. And the reality is you have to make sure that as you grow, you're maintaining that core DNA that kind of that got you there. Doesn't mean that's what's going to get you the next phase, but you can't necessarily abandon that secret sauce. And Steve Jobs had a pretty good quote. He was talking about Apple, and I think it was his first tenure, and they started making it. I mean, they achieved $1 billion, and so, I can't remember the metrics, but essentially, and he said, "Hey, we got really smart and brought all these very, very smart people from the business schools and Harvard and Wharton and Wall Street, and we started to fail because they were applying kind of book knowledge or just standardized processes to a movement which we now know as Apple was really a tectonic shift in American business landscape and technology, and also the philosophy of their business model. And it wasn't until they kind of took all those people out and said, well, thanks for playing, it hasn't been a great experience, and brought back some of those innovators. He often talked about some of the best managers in that quote are those who aren't seeking the title, right? And so I found that too, also in my military experience. You have titles and you have roles, but really, those who seek and lust for power and control oftentimes are corrupted by their own desires, and it can really lead to some negative results. So he would say, listen, I'm looking for that really high performer that believes in a greater mission and a greater cause, or sees the vision, and then through that energy can lift boats around them. Ultimately, people only get so far, but still, I mean, they can accomplish great things beyond what they thought was possible. So,
Hmm. What are some of the elements of the strongest cultures that you've experienced throughout your tenure?
well, we often talk, and every company does it, and it kind of really irritates the daylights on me because it's just like check the box. Hey, here's our core values, and here's this, and here's our mission statement, and here's that. That's cute. I guess you have to do it. It's a great second page on a presentation. Um, I think people read it off a slide and go, here's our values. Oh, we have integrity and we believe in this and value and talking to the client. What I found is that clients and just people in general kind of sniff out the bull when it's coming. People ultimately will detect the generosity, or excuse me, the genuine thoughts and interactions with people.
Hmm.
And I think one of my teams and one of my successes has always, whether it be Merlin or merchants or the military, the three M's, um, has been direct, honest. I have cared for, I legitimately care for the well-being of when I was in the military, my soldiers and my subordinates and my employees with merchants and my team members now with Merlin. I want everyone to have a successful journey. I want to bring as many people along as possible to hopefully a really exciting outcome. And people detect that stuff.
Hmm.
They detect that stuff.
Did you always look at things outside of the box, or did that come from experiences?
I think I probably always did. I've educated myself quite a bit in the last 10 years on kind of my personality type and the way I think, and I'm more of an architect type, and as you know, it's architecting innovation. Um, and I deconstruct things, and I saw something recently, and I kind of laughed about it, but I remember I'd be in school completely bored, not listening to whatever topic was being discussed, unless it was history. I had an organic love of history. Um, but I would inevitably disassemble my pen, or if God forbid you left like a calculator near me, I would disassemble a calculator. I like to break things down, see how they work.
Huh.
I don't know that I could improve those things, but if I look back now, I think the traits of architecting was there all along. Um, when I was actually one of my pastimes and leisure activities when I was a little bit, still now, but a little bit younger, was I love to be on the ATVs and the dirt bikes up in Vermont. And I love to weave together trails and pathways and kind of use the geography to create an experience for myself, obviously, but I created the route, let's say, but for those who came along to really have a fun experience and kind of pop out where they didn't know was possible, or how do we get here, or this is an amazing view. And I didn't realize at the time, but fast forward 10 years and there it was in Baghdad. And the roads and the routes and the different areas that we would travel were replete with IEDs and EFPs and what have you. And navigating those roads, one of the key elements to success was relying on those same lessons I taught myself in Vermont on those dirt bikes, on those four-wheelers, being non-predictable, weaving together routes that other people couldn't see or didn't think could work, and then finding a way to always be spontaneous but on time and move quick. And
Hmm.
I always thought about it was amazing. I felt like, and by the way, my last role in Iraq was not the role I went there for. I was supposed to be dismounted security. I ended up running our security element, and largely my role was to lead the vehicle routing for our platoon through the cities and what have you. So that wasn't even my role. But again, sometimes the best people, and I'm saying I was the best, I might have been the best in the room at the time, kind of fall into those positions. And I realized I've been training my entire life for this, and I didn't realize it until then. It was pretty amazing. So, have I always been, to answer your question with a really long answer? Probably. I just didn't realize until like a little bit older. I think the military brought that out in me. You know.
How important would you say mentorship is in creating mobility of people and cultures to grow up into the organization or up the organization?
Mentorship is critical, but you have to be open to it. You have to be it's a two-way street, right? Because let's really think about what mentors are doing. Sometimes mentors are a little bit younger, 10 years older, or excuse me, a little bit older. Maybe they're at the end of their career. People have a desire to leave something behind, and for whatever reason, um, we sometimes come across a mentor that really influences us and shares with us. And I mean, that's exciting, right? But there's something in it for them too. So it's a two-way street. So, being a mentee and not really engaging or listening or following through or leveraging the lessons that mentor has so graciously given you, that's a one-way street. So mentorship is huge. I often said to people, you can listen to me. Well, I had someone say this to me, and I've repeated it. I'll give them credit twice, and now I've claimed it as my own. You can listen now, or you can learn for yourself in 10 years. And that's kind of the essence of mentorship, right? They have walked the path and can tell you, look out for these pitfalls. And I'll go all the way back to one of the core competencies of Merlin, the Merlin Group, is to in our competencies talk about, hey, there's some pitfalls here. We probably can help you, educate you, and maybe give you a better chance for survival and success. But having core mentors in life is critical. Hopefully, you organically find them. Someone sees you and take a liking to you and say, hey, I want to help that young man or that young lady, and then you really have an amazing opportunity there. It's a wealth of knowledge. Ultimately too, there's introductions and there's a material gain with that can be realized, but ultimately, really, it's about just that intrinsic value of transferring wisdom from one generation to the other.
You're a great connector of people and connecting her of how people can benefit from one each other in a value creating way. So for the listeners that are apprehensive to make introductions or would feel anxious about the idea of potentially bringing parties together that otherwise wouldn't know each other, what's your if you're going to grab them and shake them, what do you say to them?
Well, we had a very large enterprise pursuit in my last role, and someone had said, "Well, what is the in this case, it was a fleet management role, and what's the fleet size, and what's the makeup of this, and what's the value?" And I said, "I don't know, and I don't really care. The company is so big that I just want to be friends, and if we just become friends." We're probably going to find at some point some business we can conduct together. And so I'd say to anybody that's thinking about making a connection that's outside, we call it cross industry collaboration, CIC. I would say there's probably some synergies, a word I don't like, but I'm going to start using, I guess. Well, it's so overused, and anyone that's worked for me knows that I banned that word many times for the last 10 years, but um, so for lack of a better word, I guess I need to do some homework and come up with a better synonym. But yeah, there's some synergies with almost every organization. And if it's not overtly obvious, then probably as you build that relationship and you talk to people, you're going to identify some areas that are probably completely out of the box that say, you know what, there's something here, I think, And at the end of the day, you interact with professionals, like-minded individuals that have innovative mindsets, out-of-the-box thinking, and we've all heard the social dynamics. You are the composition of the closest five people. We'll take that to business. If you associate with innovative, motivated, forward-thinking individuals, you're probably gonna take on some of those characteristics or reinforce those within you that are already there. So there's really no downside. I'm very confident that most people, if they're willing, will find some ways to make some connections that are both personal but also professional that could benefit all parties.
Hmm. And, what about key traits to connecting people, like professionally, in a way that leads to tangible outcomes? What would you say is how you would go about it?
Okay, key traits. Well, I mean, willingness to discuss, willingness to be open. Now, we always have NDAs and we have proprietary information we have to protect, but you have to share something. So, work hard to find what you can be open about and share. Classic, be willing to listen. Don't be the one talking the whole time. You learn far more from listening than talking, obviously. And then if you decide, hey, I think there's something here, put some real. I talk about the potluck, right? And if you're going to sit down and you think there's a business opportunity and you kind of know each other, well, be prepared to bring something to the table, right? No one comes to a potluck and just eats and leaves, right? You got to bring some potato salad. You got to bring the plates, bring the paper towel, whatever you can bring. But don't come into that in a one-way relationship. At the core, there should always be, you should work really hard to make sure that your partner that you're engaging with has a win as well as you do. One of my mentors, maybe 5 years ago, a very large company, in an early interaction said, well, this is great for us, Rick and merchants. What you're offering is fantastic for us. We love what you're saying. What's in it for you? And this individual didn't feel like we had enough in it. He's like, okay, we like what you're offering, but we're afraid it's too one way. We're gonna bring some more. We're gonna bring some more potato salad. We're gonna bring some macaroni salad to the buffet and to the potluck. And so I never forgot that. It's like what they liked what they saw. They felt they had a good partner
Wow.
and really wanted to help us grow into that business with them. And they felt like, hey, and I'll tell you, I remember a much much more boiled down example. I have a property in Vermont, and it is rough. It is multi-layered, and it's difficult to mow and weed whack, and it is a bear. And a young man come to me a few years back and say, "Yeah, Mr. Bell, like really, I'm doing landscaping. I'd love to take on this project." And normally I would do it all myself. Get a little bit older, a little grayer. I said, I suppose having a young man probably just might be better than my old body, broken down body. And so he says, I said, well, how much? And he said, $25. And I go, all right, what is this, 1930? And I said, that's a great price. You're going to do it for $25. You're going to break your back, and I'm never going to see you again. I'll tell you right now, this is $100 all day long. And he was stunned. I said, look, I want to have a relationship. And I didn't realize at the time, but that's what I was doing the same thing that my mentor did with me with that enterprise level account a few years later. Take the 20. Now, a neighbor did take the $25 and he did it once or twice. It's just too much. And he never went back, right? Or they just associated the relationship. So it is in your interest to be fair, to make sure you work to make the counterparts have a win-win. Otherwise, it's kind of a one and done. And that's not really it can be successful financially for somebody, for businesses and people, but it's really not the kind of people I'd want to work with.
Architect of innovation. What is an architect of innovation, or architect in your view as it relates to business?
So innovation is the recipe is partly organic. You have to have kind of a baseline mindset to be willing to innovate. In some cases, it's the old dog, new tricks. Maybe it's just not part of that person's DNA. Another area is it just has to be something that needs to be released within people. They have to be giving the room to run and experience their kind of their unbridled abilities. But so there's part of that is just you got to have kind of a bit of a natural swing, right? And then the second part is structural, right? You have to kind of have a process to say, okay, if we're going to be innovative, and we kind of talked about this a minute ago, like, hey, I think, for example, there's some synergies here. Let's get together. Well, then once you decide to get together, you better have some constructs in order to take that raw innovative energy and mindset and bring it into focus with some discipline and structure, and then really have the tenacity of the takeaway, right? So, we have meetings. Well, here's the takeaways, and we'll see you next week. And no one does anything, or nothing happens, and the follow-up is weak and meek. You can't do that. So the architecting part is building that structure around the innovation, the organic or the natural innovative mindset.
Why do you think the follow-up is weak and meek often?
And we feel good. I think people. I talk oftentimes about how in this case in business we find ways to get these dopamine releases in our brains, very big or little, whatever it is, and we have moments where that's a great meeting. Everyone's smiling. you feel good, might be a Friday afternoon, whatever it is. And the hard work is yet to really be done. Now, the hard work sometimes brings those dopamine levels down because now you get to sweat, you got to grind, you got to ask tough questions, you got to hold your counterparts accountable, reinforce so you don't get the same reaction. And so you start off at a high, and then it's like, okay, and then you may never get that same lift again. The reality is you will when you structure an interaction or an engagement. You start off high. This is great. We all love what we have here. Let's put it into action. If you structure that, you'll have that positive feeling. I'm not a biologist, but I'll just play one on TV on occasion. But you get that release of business euphoria. And if you go in the sales world, we would talk about pipelines and pipe dreams. I often would tell my teams when I was a director of sales, like, okay, so it's Friday afternoon, and right around noon till 5 p.m., the lying begins. And you lie to yourself at 1 o'clock and 2 p.m. and 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., you crack open a beer, you're still lying to yourself, and you're saying, I have a strong pipeline, I had some good meetings. Next week, there's going to be 4, 5, 6 great opportunities. You send your report into your manager, and yeah, I'm going to put these up there, the top percentages of possible closing. And you do that, you drive that good feeling all weekend long, but right around Sunday at 4 p.m., bit of a feeling starts creeping in. You say, oh, geez, I didn't actually hear back from them when I thought I was going to, and I didn't get that signed contract back. They said it was going to be and you start by Monday, you're in complete despair, like nothing really happened. And we lie to ourselves, and maybe it's Monday or Tuesday. And what happens is you lose time, valuable time. A mentor or a very influential person in my middle sales career talked about when it's good times to sell and bad times to sell. Said, hey, the best time to sell is when you're selling, when your people are closing deals and the contracts are coming in. That's when you put the pedal to the metal, because you have the aura of a winner. You're light in feeling. You're fun to engage with. It's like winning at the tables in Vegas. Hey, everybody, let's go. This is fantastic. And your countenance around your energy is so positive that people want to do business with you. Like, that guy's great. I really want to work with that person. You have some great conversations, and maybe some of the best sales conversations have nothing to do with the subject at all. It's just getting to know each other and say, I want to work with this person. When you're not selling, and when things aren't going so good, he used to say, it's like you're on your hands and knees eating cracker crumbs, and you'll do anything for a deal, and you're desperate, and you smell of failure. You reek of desperation, and nobody likes that. So, when we lie to ourselves falsely on a Friday afternoon about whatever it is, by Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, the desperation sets in, and a lot of bad behaviors come in, and it becomes a downward cycle. So, most of success in this regard is about being very direct and very honest with oneself.
What do you say to the person that's succeeding and now they're taking a couple days off with their
I'm not great.
they're locked behind their head, feet on the desk?
Yeah, I'm not
How do
great
you
with
wake somebody out of that?
Yeah, I'm not great with that. Listen, I'm not perfect, right? So I would say that one of the I've always concerned myself with, you ramp up, you get the RPMs going at 110, and you're really performing, and you've earned that time off. You deserve that time off. I worry sometimes that when you disconnect, you unplugged, and you bring the RPMs down to 40 or down out of the red zone, the green zone. I'm always concerned that maybe I'll never get back up to that level. So I don't think that's the right answer. I don't think I have all the right answers. I'm still a work in progress, like everybody. But I think there's a balance. I think if you're a high performer and you're driving success through sheer energy and force of will, that's also a warning sign, right? Because if you're a business leader, you really have to start saying, how do I do this with other people? How do I leverage? How do I bring those top lieutenants? How do I bring more people on board? and that I can actually elongate my success curve, because ultimately you crash and you burn. It's happened many times. People see it. So you probably have to be very, self-reflective and look and saying it's not sustainable, but work on ways to maybe cast off some of those responsibilities, so that maybe you bring it down to back in the green zone, so to speak,
Mm.
and you have share that. You have to share the wins, you have to share the revenue, the commissions, whatever, however you want to look at it. I would say one of the tipping points, or not even tipping point, but one of the real launching pads for merchants back in 2015, when I came back after my time in the Army, was my boss at the time wore all hats. We had 11 people. We did about, $8, $9, $10 million a year in revenue. And he was the transportation guy. He was the sales manager. He was HR. He wore every hat. And I came back, as I'd worked for him years earlier in the rental car division. And he said, "Hey, my plan here is in about a year, I'm going to take off the sales hat, give it to you, and you take over sales and build whatever you do." And there's a lot that went behind that, but that's another story for another day. And then he did the same thing with his ordering hat from the dealers and the OEMs, and his transportation hat. And over the next few years, we started building the competencies in his management team, that we went from really at 10, 11, $12 million a year in revenue up to $20 million, almost $20 million. And that in itself is dramatic. You're talking about 100%, over 100% increase almost 100% increase in revenue in just a couple of years. But most importantly, what that did is it built the structure that when the opportunity was there and seized upon with last mile and the Amazons and the UPS and all these companies, that we had the structure to take off in that rocket ship. Imagine a rocket laying on the ground. You like the rocket just crashes into something. You have to be ready to go. And so it was really fortunate. So I'd say go way back to one of your questions. It's future-proofing companies. If they have a vision, a strategic vision to get somewhere, they have to really work on that structure, and not in the moment. The best they can, they have to prepare for what that structure will look like in the next phase of their corporate evolution. And people individually probably need to do the same thing. If you're out every night partying it up and this, that, the other thing, well, where is that energy that going to come from to propel you to the next level? How are you going to sustain a cross-country flight, do a 3-4 hour presentation, the meeting of your life, if you've been draining the batteries day in and day out for weeks, right? So conditioning the mind and body, we often hear, is critical. It's you have to build the physical and the mental habits in order to sustain that next phase that you envision is your personal and your corporate strategic plan.
How important, or what's your philosophy on the leader creating a capacity for their teammates to hold them accountable?
Oh, well, so when you build something from nothing, and you were there before there was there, right? Sounds a little dramatic, right? Sounds like what was before the Big Bang. So you looked in the field and you saw nothing, and now there's a skyscraper. Or you looked in a room, you walked into Steve Jobs in his garage, and he set up a table, and then here's Apple with 1 million employees. I think there is and again, history tells us this. Philosophers since time immemorial tell us this. You have to fight against that, that omnipresent, omnipotent type of mindset where I am all things. In the military, I'll go to the M military. In the platoon that I ran, I wasn't the best shooter sniper. I wasn't the fastest runner. I couldn't do the most push-ups. I was not the best at almost anything, but I was identifying very good people for those roles. I recognized my own limitations, because if you don't, then you think you're the best at everything, and that's very dangerous. And I think that was a key part to success. I would say that in my last year with merchants, I had a vision of saying, you know, the mobility division has really got going on rental, and we rented a lot of vehicles. But merchants itself is a fleet management company and long-term leasing company is part of the real value of the company. And I wanted to support that by transforming some of our competencies into that space. We, in that last year, as a rental division, signed several large clients. We were able to put very large leasing deals together. Services, these are all golden programs for a fleet management company. And honestly, to be perfectly honest with you, I couldn't tell you how those deals, the mechanics of those deals. You know, my team essentially set up the relationship, set the conditions for success, and then I identified a very qualified director that knows those topics. I said, "Hey, you're my man. I don't know it, you know it. We're going to work best what we do, and we're going to ask you to do best what you do." And by identifying that I couldn't do it. I don't have that skill set, and there's someone better in the room. We're able to win those deals and accomplish those goals. So a leader really has to kind of say, it's okay not to be in command of all things at all times. It's okay if I bring somebody on, especially if they're at a different stage in their professional development that may be better than me. There's definitely better salespeople. There's better managers. But at this time and place, I'm the boss. I'm the president. I'm the CEO, whatever it is. So we're going to go from there. And I'm going to be thankful I have these high quality people working for me and towards this common goal. So I think that becomes the power that a leader has when they are generous with their praise, they're humble, when they reflect inward, that they bring people on and they give them the power to be more than the sum of their parts. And as a team is what you really accomplish things. So it's tough. So yeah, you have to be very reflective. If you're a leader, you built it. Yes, you were there before there was anything. You know, it's the alpha and the omega, you know, the beginning and the end. But you have to ask, what are you really trying to accomplish? What do you really want to do here? I want to build a business. I want people to have homes and vacations and their kids go to college and achieve their hopes and dreams. Well, there's probably going to be people in your organization that are better than you at different things. And what you want to do is encourage, promote, and put those people in positions that they can really have a greater effect. So, and by doing that, if you still maintain some level of preeminence, because it's not an easy thing to do. You know, it's not easy. It's not an easy thing to do, to kind of lay down, take the hat off to those who might be more qualified. And then you find once you do that, your capacity for innovation and motivation probably explodes and you can do more and more and more. So
what about how what's the importance of engaged leadership?
well, I think that's a two-way street, right? So sometimes there's too much engagement, right? So sometimes we have the psychology of I need to say something or do something for the machine just because I need to say or do something. I've had oftentimes people in meetings, subordinates, whatever it is, and the meeting's kind of wrapping up. And again, if it's a feel-good meeting, oh, hey, I have one more thing. And I think we should look at the depreciation curve on of the widgets on, Q4. Huh? I'll say, did you just say that to say something? And oftentimes people do that because they feel like they've got to chime in. Engagement, even from a boss, a leader, sometimes it's better to say nothing. Sometimes it's listen, let your team go. Got it. I hear, I understand. I'm available for any questions. My office is down the hallway. And then kind of reflect on that. Make sure you have good note taking, make sure you have good recap of the meeting. But just your presence sometimes can be a benefit, but it also can be a deterrent. You have to get out of the room. You have to let your people achieve or fail, frankly. Now, hopefully they don't fail in a way that sinks the company, right? But if there's a project, you have to see what they can do. if you're a mid-level manager, a senior manager, a director, and you have series of direct reports, it's critical to be engaged with them, but also respect the chain of command. That's a military one, right? Respect the chain of command. Don't jump 2 layers down and engage. You can be polite, you can be pleasant. How's your day? That's great. Thank you for working here. That's fantastic. I love the journey, but it should be kind of superficial but genuine. Don't get into the weeds. They have assistant managers and they have managers and they have directors and assistant directors. Let them do their job. You just push the corporate messaging, the positive messaging, and hold your direct reports, your directors and your VPs, if you're a president, accountable to their numbers and their P&Ls and what have you. But too much engagement is not a good thing. It has to be in the right place at the right time. And it's generally always a little bit better to pull back, reflect, and then come back with maybe a few hours or days to come back with your response. If you've taken on a role where it does require engagement, and I am part of this, and I have to run, then it's really important that you are timely, you're responsive. I often said with my subordinates, like I may get 100 to 50, 200 emails a day and 37 phone calls. If I don't get back to you by the end of the day, I'll probably text you and say, I'm free now. Do you have a few minutes? I generally won't call my subordinates after hours unless they've asked me to. But they're going to get a response. Hey, I'm available now. If not, we can talk first thing in the morning. So there's that kind of thing there too. Also build a rapport. Build a rapport based on habits. I love drive time, windshield time. So if you're oftentimes in my last role, myself and the gentleman I reported to, we're so busy, but we knew that 7:30 to 8 a.m. every day, there was some windshield time, and we would engage and we just knock off 3 or 4 or 5 critical items, make sure we're aligned on what we're trying to accomplish. I may not talk to him the rest of the day till the next day, but we always kind of kept the ship in the right direction because of those habit forming engagements.
What's the necessity or impulse behind responsiveness?
Well, when you're not responsive, people feel disrespected. They feel that their value, their opinions, or whatever what they're trying to bring to you isn't important. So you may have a real detrimental effect on your subordinates, and might be probably a demotivator. Well, if they don't have the time to respond, or if they don't, what does that tell you? And we just take it in our own life. Take it, just any reaction. If you're texting with your buddy from college, and we all have someone in our lives, by the way, and I think we have this, where you say, someone texts you and you're, hey, I'm doing great. That's great. How are you? A day goes by. They didn't respond. What is with that, right? Or you reach out to them, hey, what are you doing this weekend? Would you like to get together at the beach? We're going to go out there. And you hear nothing. You might hear a week later, oh, hey, sorry, I just saw this. Okay, well, some time management, manage those little red dots on your phone. You kind of feel like, well, I guess you're not really interested in engaging. But if that same person reached out to you and 3 minutes goes by, you don't respond, what's wrong? What's going on? Where are you? What's happening? So I think we all have 1 or 2 of those in our lives. Think how that affects those interpersonal private relationships, where you can kind of express yourself and say, hey, jerk, been friends for 20 years. Pick up the damn phone. You can't say that to the owner of the company or advisor or someone else, some other department. So you just have to kind of be silent and just take it. That's going to have a detrimental effect. So, and I'd say, I'll say one other thing too. We're in a place now where technology can be overwhelming. Now, the truth of the matter is, when you're a leader, director, manager, whatever it is, if you have the option, I highly recommend limiting the pathways of communication. So this sounds contrary to what we're being told in business today, but we have Slack, we have Zoom messaging, we have texting, we have IMs with whatever CRM you're in, might be Zoom, with Salesforce. We have phone calls, we have emails. So if I'm one person and there's 6 or 7 different ways to contact me, that's kind of hard to manage. There's going to be something that's going to get missed. I always, and someone said, well, you could do that because because of your role. I was high enough, but I would encourage leaders need to look at this. I would just say, look, I had a couple rules. Um, I only communicate from email, phone call, and text. If you know me well enough to text me, then that's fine. Um, Email me or call me. If I cannot take the call, it'll go to voicemail. But I can assure you, I'm hearing your message, and you'll get a response back, whether it be email or a phone call back. If you CC me on an email, it will go without. It'll be deleted without reading, because obviously, if I'm being CC'd, it's not important enough. Now that I kind of drew the line with our senior vice president and our CEO, but other than that, pretty much I wasn't going to read that email. And it's CCing everybody is just lazy. You're diluting the responsibility of that communication. When you share responsibility, it equals no responsibility. So I would really just delete emails without reading. If you're going to send a communication, think about what you're sending. If you're sending me a 17 paragraph email, I don't have time for that. Like, pick up the phone, talk me through what this is, because I'm going to delete that without reading. And I'll let you know, delete it without reading. So you limit those channels of communication because you can only do so much. And it's a math problem. If you get 150 emails a day, you read those, it takes a minute or two, respond to say 75 of them, a minute or two. You take 32 phone calls a day. Pretty much your whole day is just either responding, in or out communication. And where's the productivity in your actual job, right? And if that productivity comes from 6 p.m. until midnight, well, now let's go back to your running in the red zone, and how long can that operate? So you got to limit the amount of the pathways of communication to a very high degree. As a leader, you have to do this, allow the same thing for your subordinates. You have a customer manager, right? A account manager. If they have Zoom info and Salesforce and Slack and email and text and call, they're suffering the same bloody thing. Give them the power to say, listen, that's great. I love it. Too much. We can only get so much done. It's just a math problem. So that really, and you get this anxiety when you've backed up 7 messages on Slack, 22 messages in Salesforce messaging, and 18 emails, and 3 unlistened to voicemails. How productive is that person going to be? It's going to start swirling down. So be disciplined, be focused there, be courteous. And if it has to be said, say it, but say it short, to a point, and try to direct those messages to those people that really need them.
You mentioned earlier about the going a couple levels down as a leader to communicate with subordinate, and maybe their subordinate, superficial but genuine. What if it's why that and not greater depth? Like what's the recommendation against that, right? How does that undermine the subordinate?
Yeah, well, we can go back to Socrates, right? Or to Plato, or any philosopher. We've known this for our entire lives. Familiarity breeds contempt. You get too close, you get too intimate. Rules don't seem to apply. Leaders have to make tough decisions sometimes, and it's best to be insulated on some emotional levels from that, because you have to make decisions in the best interest of the company. That doesn't always align to the individuals in the company. Layoffs, profit loss, things like that, tough times. But you have to have definitive walls between leadership and subordinates. And I would even carry that for anyone in an organization should really draw that line, work and private life. I personally don't mix the two. If I am friends with people outside of work, it's because I've known them since before work, right? But generally, I don't intermingle my work life with anything in my private life. I don't share social media. Zero. There's no interaction whatsoever. And as a leader, as you're matriculating up, I understand when you're in lower levels in your business functions, you want to be seen and be heard, and you're the peacock trying to get noticed by the VPs and all that. I got all that. That's important, I guess, because I did it myself at one time. But as those leaders move up, make sure that your interactions at these social functions, give us just some guidelines. No more ever, no more than 2 drinks. Generally don't drink, but if you're going to drink, have no more than 2 drinks. Always leave well before things kind of get to the fun stage. I know you want to have fun, and I like to have fun too, but that's not the environment for the fun. All that it really just takes away from the shine that leadership has for you. You're given a title and a role, right? And not all VPs or all directors are created equally. Some take that position and they water it down and they make it weaker and they make people familiar. And I'm always going to go to Director John, as opposed to Director Mike, because Mike is, yeah, he's all business. That's his job, to be all business. If you're going to go jacking your jaw with John for an hour and getting familiar and talking about boats and fishing, all this stuff, work productivity is not happening. And there's on some level where that employee might just say, "Hey, we're friends. What's going on? Give me that other deal." Right. And that's going to just undermine organization in a big way.
Politics.
Definitive separation for sure.
Would you say that creates politics?
Well, politicking, right? So people are lobbying for different positions and roles, and so and so. I don't know if they really did it. Turn it off. If anyone comes to you with any kind of information like that, your leader, just I would say real clearly, like, hey, there's a process for that. We have a chain of command. We have HR. If you have a real complaint or issue, go to your manager, go through HR. Right? It's not for me to hear that. And then you just push them off pretty quickly. And that's natural. And by the way, what are those, especially in a sales organization, what are those individuals doing? Well, they're doing what they do. They're selling, they're engaging, they're building personal relationships. That's what they're trained to do. And so they're going to certainly do that internally, and obviously externally. It benefits the company when they build those personal relationships. I teach that all the time. Build these type relationships with your prospective clients, because it really helps you move your business, and eventually, of course, you become friends. And but that's not great internally,
Yeah.
but that's their skill set. So you have to be really disciplined and say, hey, I know what kind of Jedi mind trick you're trying here. I'm going to be immune to the Force today, and just have some definitive rules. And it doesn't make you feel good. You don't get the dopamine reaction. It's just the opposite. You kind of feel like, crap, I really want to hang out. I would love to have another 2 drinks and play another game. And, I would like to do that. I guarantee you it's going to hurt you. And in my experience, as tough as it's been to be disciplined like that, it has immeasurably enhanced my stature, given me more strength and more support from my employees than had I just been, Joe Six-Pack, and let's talk about, the game last night. There's a professional way to do those things, and there's also not. So just because it feels right doesn't mean it is right.
Rick, I'm going to read our quote again. There's no evil in sorcery, only in the hearts of men. My request is that you remember this. Merlin, thank you so much for hopefully part 1 of some wisdom from the Merlin Group on the Culture Matters podcast. I really appreciated this today. It's was a very a lot of fun. In closing, final thoughts of what, like, if you were to, put a theme to this conversation for our listeners.
Yeah. Well, first off, Jay, thank you very much for having me. I've enjoyed it. Anytime anyone allows me to talk, it's a nice thing, because I do it too much sometimes. I'd say I think theme wise overall, it's not necessarily an industry; it's a mindset. I used to call it I was with Merchants Mobility. I call it the mobility mindset. This is really now the Merlin mindset, and you can apply some of those structures to whatever you're doing, your personal life, your professional life. Be willing to innovate, be willing to communicate, willing to engage, and then have structure around certain things that allow you to build upon those. Without structure, you're just a bowl of jello, right? Innovation, it's great, but without structure, there's not a whole lot to there. You need to put bones and structure around those ideas. So it's a mindset. So again, I really appreciate the time.
Thank you. And thank you all for listening. Please leave us a review on the Culture Matters podcast. And we will see you next time. Thanks, Rick.